All right, guys. So, I promised a few people that I would release a course slash video guide on these two topics. So I thought I would finally do it. It's going to be free, because previously I put it as a bonus in one of my products called Exploding Insights. So if you guys want to buy that, you can, but it's just like an idea database. And basically, the two courses that I mentioned I would drop are first one is called the blueprint, how to start your first micro SaaS, and then the blueprint of how to build and ship fast. So I thought I would just make a quick video, just combining both things because they're kind of hand in hand, and it makes more sense how when you're like trying to make money and when you have to like build and sell something, that like the entire process is like combined. So this is going to be like one guide for both of these courses that I'm finally releasing after 2 years. So yeah, let me just go over like kind of my thought process, and this is like more of a brain dump and kind of how um, you should think about it. So basically, with like the way that AI is progressing right now, and um, basically there's like so many moving factors that if I release the course today, it would probably be outdated by like next week, right? So basically, like the framework that you need is how do I even think about these two problems? So basically, with a lot of my friends that want to start their first business, one of the biggest problems they have is like, oh, how do I find the right idea? And then after they find the right idea, then they're like, oh, how do I build it? And then after they build it, they're like, how do I like sell it, right? So it's like basically in business, it's like always like one problem after another. So essentially, like everything in business is like how do you problem solve as efficiently as possible. So that's like probably a separate video, but like in on the topic of how do you problem solve, right? So the first thing is that you just have to be resourceful. So what that means is that like you have to use all the resources that you have that can help you solve that problem. So the first thing is that you have to identify the problem, and then after you understand what the problem is, then you can just go out and find solutions that other people have done, because most problems have already been solved before. So there aren't that many unique problems. Like if you're trying to build a rocket to go to Mars, that's obviously like you're gonna have a bunch of problems that haven't been solved before. But like a lot of these problems that come up, especially when you're trying to scale from like 0 to 1,000 or 1,000 to 10,000, like all these problems have been solved by many of people in the world, and it's your job to like figure out like how to solve the problem in the fastest way. So I'll just go over like how do you problem solve effectively for like about a minute or two, because I think this is probably the most efficient, like the highest ROI thing I can share, just because it'll help you like solve a bunch of problems, because like these are just two problems, which is like how do you find a idea to build, and then the other problem is like how do I build it. So like these are just two problems, but like in business there are like thousand and thousand problems where once you solve one problem there's like a new problem, right? So the first thing is that you want to make sure you correctly identify the problem. So like seems very trivial, but like in most cases, like this step is 90% of the work, simply because either people can't identify what the bottleneck or problem is, or if they do, they don't solve it in the most efficient way. So I'll just go through kind of like how I problem solve. So the first step is like just think about what is the bottleneck, right? So if I have a product and I'm trying to scale it, then obviously the bottleneck is getting more traffic. After I get more traffic, then maybe not all those people will convert into paying me for the product, right? So at every step of the process, there's a bottleneck that you have to solve before going on to the next one. So the way that like I like to find out what the bottleneck is that if I had to like 10x the business or 10x the metric that I'm trying to solve for, like what is stopping me from getting that outcome that I want. So let's say I have a like let's say in my life I'm working a job and I want to make 10K so that I can help pay for rent and cover the cost of like my food and Ubers, right? So what is the bottleneck? Like why can't I get 10K? So maybe the first bottleneck is I'm not sure what idea that I should build out. I'm not sure what problem I should solve for. I'm not sure what market I should sell to. So like all these are problems that probably when I'm starting out, it's not very clear on like what is the actual problem. But like as you like do more of the skill of problem solving, like you're gonna get better and better over time, right? So just like have this mindset like of, oh, even though I'm not great at this skill of problem solving, like if I work on it over years, I'll get better, right? So like basically like I've done enough products and enough businesses where I kind of know like what the bottleneck is, but like for you, probably you're gonna have to test out a few things. If you think something is a bottleneck and you try to solve it and it doesn't move the needle, then it might be like a combination of two things, which is like, oh, maybe that's not the right bottleneck, or you didn't solve it in the right way. So like part of that is just like getting courses and coaches to help you. And like the other mindset shift that I had that was like really useful is like what um what is the best way to solve it. So like sometimes it's a course, sometimes it's using YouTube videos. So yeah, you just have to experiment with a lot of these things to kind of figure out. So all right, so the bottleneck is the first step, which is stopping you from getting the outcome that you want. And then after you get the bottleneck solved, then the next thing is just executing and making sure that the thing that you solve for actually move the needle. And then like it's just like repeat of these two steps. So yeah, like that's just problem solving in a nutshell. I thought I would go over that in like first, just because like within business there's like so many points in the process where like you're gonna have to problem solve for yourself, and this step of like finding the bottleneck, fixing it, and then going to the next problem is like kind of like what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life in business, at least. So yeah, this is just like a example of how you can problem solve. The other big thing is that you just want to use AI. So like any problem that I have, like I just ask AI like, oh, this is the problem I think I have, what are some ways to solve it, right? So just that's like a really easy way. Like for any problem that you have, just give it to AI. All right, so yeah, let me just go over the first thing, which is the blueprint of how you start your first micro SaaS. So if I had to summarize it in like 5 minutes, what I would like recommend myself, like if I was giving like advice to a younger version of myself, is I would target the market first. So I know I mentioned like you should find ideas and all that, but it's a lot easier to find markets where the people in that market are paying a lot for a specific pain point that is highly urgent for them to solve. So one example that I can come up with is like in the like real estate niche, right? So there are people like realtors that constantly take phone calls. So one of the pain points is that they constantly have to be by their phone to take all the calls. So that's a huge pain point. So if you're able to solve that pain point where let's say they want to take the Friday off or they want to take the weekends off, but they don't want to miss all the phone calls that they can get, like you can build out a solution where let's say you build out a AI voice agent that takes those calls while they're not by their phone, right? So that's just like one niche where it's like super painful. And you can imagine like across multiple niches like doctors, lawyers, like any niche where there's a lot of money in making sure that you have to take a phone call, like that's a painful problem where they're actually losing money. So like that's just the first thing, which is like finding the biggest market with the highest level of pain that they're willing to pay for. So that's step one. And then probably the second step is like I would get really good at building or selling. So if I'm really good at selling, then I would just partner with someone that is really good at selling. And then vice versa, where like let's say I'm really good at selling and marketing, then I would find a person that's really good at building. So like that's like essentially all you need, which is like finding a problem and then being able to build and sell something to that market. So I think that's essentially like all you need to do. And obviously like when you start out, like you won't be the best at that process, but through iterations of coming up with products and coming up with businesses, like you're going to be able to spot those problems faster. You're going to be able to build products faster. You're going to be able to sell faster. So like the biggest mindset shift is just being willing to learn and being open to the fact that you don't have to know it all at first. And like a lot of like business is just like learning as you go. So that's how I would start my micro SaaS, which is I would first find a painful problem, and then I would build it, and then I would find a marketer or salesperson to help me sell it, and that's all I would do for like a year or 2 years. And I'm almost positive that within 2 to 3 years, you can have a hit that makes you a millionaire. So yeah, that's like the first course, which is like how do you start your micro SaaS. And then the second one is how do you build and ship fast. So obviously right now there's like a bunch of AI products and in the market, like Claude Code, Codex, whatnot. And I think the biggest like mindset shift that I had in terms of being able to ship faster is just like thinking in terms of how do you get 1% improvements in all steps in the process of shipping. So I'll like give you guys an example of a different industry so that it kind of illustrates what I'm talking about. So in the auto niche, so Tesla, like what they did is that one of their goals that they had is that they wanted to ship like 5,000 cars per week, and if they couldn't hit that milestone, then I think the company would have been bankrupt. It might not be the exact numbers, but like essentially like they had to hit this milestone. And one of the biggest bottleneck in that story is that they were maybe only at like 1,000 cars per week, and they had to like essentially 5x their output. So one of the things that they did is that, like, if you guys know about like how cars are built, like it's in the factory line. So like back then, like there was the Model T, and they would have the factory line where like every worker kind of like does one part in the car, and then like you like go down the factory line, and like essentially you can imagine like the car starts off with just like the bottom, and then as it goes down the line, then more and more parts are put together. And that's like a really good analogy for software, because like essentially in software you're going from idea to the finished product or the MVP, and like within that entire line there's like front end, back end, fixing bugs, design, whatnot, right? So like there's so many steps that have to go to building a product, and it's very similar to how you would build a car. And from the Tesla story, like one of the things that they did is that they realized that you couldn't automate everything in the process. So like in some parts of the process, it was actually faster to have a human put together parts instead of using a robot. And basically what they did is that they would inspect every workshop in the factory line and see like what the bottleneck was. So let's say the car was going down the factory line and like the wheels were being put in this line here. Like Elon would just like see like why this specific workstation was taking so long, and then he would fix it. So they would either try to automate it, or they would try to fix the process where either they sped it up with humans or they just like removed it. And that's like a really good analogy for software, because like within every part of how you build software, like you can make these 1% improvements of how you go faster. So like one example is recently I have like a GitHub action that auto comments for the code review to run. So that speeds up the entire process because I don't have to comment anymore, right? So it just auto code reviews every PR that is pushed. And the lesson from that is that I think if you want to ship fast, like you just have to think about the entire process and be able to like break down into micro steps of like all the steps that go into the final product, and then think about how you can either delete that process or make it go faster or to automate it. And I think it's just like it takes a lot of work, and like in most cases it's not this like one shot answer where it's like, oh, if you use this workflow with these like crazy sub agents, it'll make you ship faster. Like in like 99% of cases it's just like, oh, how do I make this one part faster? And like, how do I like actually find out like which parts in the software process is taking really long? So let's say like when I'm making software, like the design piece is taking really long, right? So what I would do is I would either hire a designer, or I would just hire someone that is really like probably better than me at design, and get them to do the design part. So yeah, like the main lesson is just like what I do is like I just think about how I can make the entire process go 1% faster every day. And you can imagine by the end of like a month or 2 months, like you're gonna be able to ship 2 to 3 times faster. So that's like one lesson. And then the other lesson is basically just trying out all the tools. Like what I found is like a lot of my software friends, like they either like find a tool, they like it, and then they stick with it. But I think since there are like so many AI tools that are coming out nowadays, it's actually positive ROI if you just try out every tool and see if it can fix any part of your entire software process. So yeah, like I would do that. And then the last lesson that I have is that with like both of these courses, or both of these topics, like I find that a lot of people like just look inside the software business or software industry to solve their problems. But like one of the biggest insights that I've had is that like you can find other industries that have a similar problem and apply that problem solving to your current industry. So that like goes back to my first lesson, which is like all businesses, which is just coming up with solutions to problems, right? So if you think about it, um, a lot of tech is kind of like a bubble where it's like, oh, you have to do it this way because like these software guys do it this way. But like if you actually want to like push the frontiers, I think the best way is just to like find other industries to copy from. And I remember from like the Elon book where like he would study toy factories or toys companies, because basically with toys they're able to produce like millions and millions of toys every year, especially like during Christmas, right? And what Elon did is that he would take the manufacturing processes from toys and bring it back to software and to the entire process of building cars. And I think that's like a pretty important lesson, because a lot of problems that people have in software, which is like, oh, how do I get traffic? How do I convert the users? Like these problems have already been solved in other industries as well. So let's imagine like one of the biggest industries that primarily focuses on getting customers is like affiliate, right? So affiliate guys will like only focus on getting traffic and then converting it. So like if you're able to study that industry, then you can like apply a lot of those practices and lessons to software. So yeah, that's the end of this video. Hopefully that was like a really comprehensive guide, because I think this is like more of a guide of like how to grow business and software, but like it can be applied to like a lot of other like problems that you guys may have, because like generally it's just like solving problems. So yeah, hopefully that was useful. And then if you guys do want like a service to grow your Twitter, we are offering this like done for you Twitter growth service right now, faceless X strategy. So this is like primarily for people that already have software that does like probably over 15K per month. But if you're interested, I will put a link of it like down below. And yeah, basically we just grow your Twitter on autopilot, and then hopefully it's profitable if you already have PMF. So yeah, that's the end of this video. Hope you guys enjoyed.